Can't separate the music and the message. You see, reggae music come to unify the people.
Not everyone likes what you're saying. For your own safety, you need to stop.
You're playing such an iconic person in history. How did you approach that role? And was there a specific aspect of Bob that you really wanted to get right?
Mm-hmm. His the vulnerability, you know, the who he was as a man, as a father, his experience as a child, like getting to know him on a personal level was that was what the family wanted to do. You know, they went in the studio, they wanted to create a film about Bob where his fans could feel like they're on a journey with him and get to know him a little bit more, you know, internally, outside of the, you know, iconic status. So, you know, I learned everything about him through his friends and family. And a lot of the guys he grew up with when he was 13 or 14, you know, I spent days with them in Trenchtown on Orange Street and went to all the places where he grew up and just listening. It was a lot of listening. I had to just really listen and absorb. And I think the movie, you know, it's about his journey to, you know, peace and love and togetherness and universal unity. And getting to understand how those themes related to him on a personal level. So like internal safety and self-love and inner peace, and where was Bob at with all of that, you know, at this time, and the trauma of that assassination, attempted assassination, and that they all nearly died that night. And to speak to people who were there and who remembered, it was really interesting to me. I was like, and then when did they make the album? It was within a few months. So I was like, out of that trauma came this incredible album. And I guess the displacement, you know, of that intense emotion went straight in. And then a lot of Bob's pals would say to me that, like, you know, he was really intense to be around at that time. And I'm like, yeah, no shit, you know. He nearly just died, you know, so it was about trying to bring that energy into it as well, you know. Bob was a really kind, beautiful, soulful, wonderful human being. He was a poet, but there was another side to him where he was tough. And they called him the general, they called him the skip. And he was a man, he was from the ghetto, you know. So trying to find all of that, you know, involved me having to really listen and understand that.
Rita is such an integral part of the story, but she's not always been at the forefront. So I wonder for you, how did you approach that role, and what was the one thing that you wanted to get across with this character?
It's really interesting that you say that she's not at the forefront, because that's, you know, something that is touched on in the film. And also the world doesn't, in its entirety, doesn't know her as this, you know, legendary figure. I'm of Jamaican heritage, so I know just how much of a legend she is and how much of a queen she is. But authentically is how I approached it. I wanted her to have, at the risk of sounding cliche, a voice that sung, you know, that was vocal and had opinions, and she spoke her feelings, but also wasn't two-dimensional. She wasn't just strong and bold and opinionated. She had vulnerability in layers that we slowly get to understand, because she's sitting on so much and she's protecting so much and is supporting so very much his journey. I just wanted her to live freely, and I think in the end we really got her there.
I think what you say as well is so important for black women, to not be this two-dimensional character in films and not play up to those stereotypes. I know she was involved in the film, did you get to meet her and get obviously her perspective on her own life?
Yeah, I did. That was one thing I was determined for. I read her book and did all the usual research and asked questions, but listen, if you're playing a legend and they're on the earth, then I'm gonna force it to happen, and I did. I met her on a couple of occasions at her home. I sat on the floor and just looked up at her like a child, listening to either a teacher or a parent, and just soaked her in. And the main thing that I really got to understand as I was sitting there was the list of questions that I had in my notebook didn't matter. That's just information. It's cool to know. I can find that out through Ziggy or Sadella or Sharon. With her, I needed to feel her spirit, because she leads with her spirit. She's so very much so like in her heart space at all times and very present at all times. And if I was able to just collect a little bit of where she is energetically, then I knew I'd be able to hopefully handle her authentically in the film.
How do you approach making a 90-minute film about this man? You know, why did you choose to hone in on that very specific period in time?
Yeah, you can't bite off too much. You know, was never interested in doing a cradle to grave. You end up taking on too much and not getting enough. And we felt that this was the richest period of time in Bob's life. This film was supposed to be a celebration of Bob's life. And so what better time to start than in 1976 when there was an attempt on his life. And what did he do? He doubled down and created Exodus, one of the greatest albums of the 20th century. So that period of time of rich musical creation, what he was able to endure personally, professionally, his family, what they must have been going through, and then his ultimate return to Jamaica. It felt like there was an inherent structure there. And so it felt like that's what we wanted to capture, and it felt like it gave us the essence of the man behind the music, and an insight into his world and his worldviews and his message. And so, that felt like the best place for us, and I'm happy we chose it.
And I know Lashana took you to task as well and said, you best get this right for Jamaicans around the world. What was it like to shoot in Jamaica? And, how did you pull together those concert scenes actually on the ground? Yeah,
fortunately for me, it was my second time shooting in Jamaica. And so it was just reuniting with a lot of the same crew again, which was fantastic. I had been to Trenchtown, but it was nice to return with Bob, an even bigger film, bigger profile. It was, the responsibility was there. So I'm so happy Lashana held me accountable. That's what you're supposed to do, right? That's my job. So anytime I'm being pushed in the way to make sure that we are doing everything we can to support, our cast, our crew, that's my job. So they absolutely, held me accountable. And not only Lashana, I'm talking like the grip trucks, our crafty team, everybody in Jamaica was very protective of Bob, as they should be. That's their local hero. He's my hero. And so, we wanted to make sure that we preserve that and we protect that legacy. We had the support of the family every step of the way. So for me, I never felt alone. I never felt like I was making a film in a vacuum. I had tremendous craftsmanship in front of and behind the camera. Robert Ellswood, Anna Shepard, Chris Lowe, Chris Bowers, Pamela Martin. Tremendous talent to help support our cast. And what an amazing cast. What an amazing cast. It was like a playground for a director.
And, he's known obviously for his music, and you touched on that incredible album, which this film shines a spotlight on. You didn't have to learn how to sing and play guitar. The decision had already been made to kind of have Bob's voice overlaid, but you did. Why was that important to you? And you did a good job, because people at my screening thought that was you singing, so.
Bob's voice was always, the plan was always that he was gonna, the concert scenes, people were coming because they want to hear Bob sing, they don't want to hear me sing, definitely don't. But I wanted to learn to play and sing because that's what Bob did. He was a musician, and he woke up every day at 5 and he played the guitar and he wrote songs. It's like playing a footballer and never kicking a football. So I just wanted to know what that feels like. Obviously in movies you can cheat up and you can pretend and mime, but you can't mime Bob. You can't mimic him, you can't imitate him. You have to find, Ziggy spoke to me about, you can't copy Bob, you can't play, no one can replicate Bob. So you have to just this is about trying to find his spirit, and to find his spirit you got to understand music a little bit. So I enjoyed learning the guitar,
And did anything surprise you about playing her? Did you learn anything, I guess, from embodying her spirit?
There's mentioning strong black women, that trope that is, continuously wedged into these narratives in film. I realized with my breaking down of that trope that there's not only a vulnerability in her, but there's also this almost like childlike innocence when it comes to her love for Bob. And I thought every time she's being bold and upright and very fierce in her demeanour, I always reminded myself to make sure there was something underneath that was soft. And I think that's one thing that black women don't often get to do in cinema, just be soft. So I encouraged that a lot, and hope that we could find the balance in every single scene.
I think you definitely did.
Thank you.
And you mentioned that you're Jamaican as well. What was it like to take on this story? Was it a scary experience to sign on? This is such a big story for Jamaicans like yourself.
The biggest, like one of the biggest. It's a responsibility, definitely. And I've taken that on, like throughout my career. I think everyone's heard me talk about Jamaica and how important it is to me. I had to throw away that very, very quickly. Like, I'm playing a queen of a country, like I can't hold that. I had to, one, separate myself as an actor, like that has this role, and then also enter this kind of vessel space that I'm this person who has come in to usher a version of her life, a part of her life, to the world. And it's an educational part also, because if the world don't get to know her in this, then I haven't done my job, do you know what I mean? I want people to know her true self through this film. So it was a responsibility at the beginning, and then I realised that it was actually just more of an honour that I'm really glad to be taking.
And you mentioned the Marley family. You had their blessing for this film, which is not something they have given to others in the past. Why do you think it was kind of your story and your project that got that, and how involved were they in the process?
They were very involved. Ziggy was on the very first call as a producer to ask me to direct that film. And so when you're having Ziggy Marley's, basically, give you the job in a lot of ways, that feels like, I must be doing something right. And the universe was definitely on my side. We had Bob's music. I'm like, this is just like some gift that's saying, Ray, you're the person to do this. And then of course I had to think, why not? Why not me? I feel like I love Bob. I can treat it right. I can give it care. I can hire the people I want to hire. I can bring on the cast that I want to find, and I can build this thing from the inside out. I can come at it through the side door, not the front door. We can make a foreign language film with no subtitles. That's it's a feat for sure in and of itself. And so, at some point you have to take a leap of faith and say that, Bob's music is what guided this whole film. The lyrics were there. He wrote it already. It's really up to me not to mess it up.